G'day. Well, here we are with one of my stud boxes, which we have at home and we also take to the competitions. Now, obviously, as you can see, there's lots of different types of studs in there, which we'll talk about a little later, but let me go through some of the other contents. We have our Super Studs spanner, which are all different types of sizes for all the different types of sizes of studs. Little horseshoe nail here to dig out some of the dirt and the grip from the holes in the actual shoe, and a bigger fella here for the more stubborn holes. We do have a tap here, which sometimes people use to clean out the stud holes, but I tend not to use this for these particular types of studs because they're self-cleaning. And here we have what we call a stud stasher, so when I'm going along I can keep my studs just here on my wrist and so I don't have to drop them on the ground. Okay, so what we have now is a whole range of studs down here. I'm just going to take this off and talk about the studs that I would particularly use. These are road studs, and in actual fact I would put these studs in my horse's shoes the day before the competition. Now, not everyone likes doing that because they're worried about the horse being in the stable with studs. They're only small road studs, but all the same, there is one here called a travel stud, much flatter and so much less risk of the horse maybe nicking himself overnight. Now, you might ask, why do I stud my horses up the night before? So often when we arrive at a competition, you might be running a little bit late for whatever reason. You might have to change the studs because of the different conditions that you're expecting to see. And so just in case you come across a problem, like there being a little stone stuck in the stud hole, at least the stud holes are all being cleaned out and all I have to do is twist one stud out and put another one in. Now, like I said a little earlier, I'll always go to a competition with my horse studded up with the road stud, and hopefully that's all they'll need. I will actually, though, have 2 studs per foot, and that brings us to a little bit of a contentious issue. Some people only like 1 stud per foot. I actually like 2. The reason why people don't like 2 is that they're always concerned about the inside stud possibly overreaching and catching the other foot. A real problem. I tend not to worry about that. I think probably only had 1 injury over all the years I've been competing with that particular problem. What I prioritize is the horse having even grip on either side of the foot. If they only have 1 stud hole on the outside, when their foot hits the ground, it tends to twist a little bit. And I'd be very concerned about pressure put on the joints further up the leg if you did that too much. Now, going along with that philosophy of how I like 2 studs per foot, there are going to be some horses that have a tendency just to touch themselves. If you do have one of those horses, there are a few precautions that you could take. One, you could make sure that you tended to use the more rounded type of stud, so it's not sharp, but also having an overreach boot. And yeah, there's nothing wrong with possibly even having overreach boots on the back feet. Now, if you do arrive at the competition and I decide that maybe my road studs aren't big enough for the slippery, soft, wet conditions, I'll tend to go up a grade. I tend to go to what we call polo studs for the fronts, and then I'll also then put what we call bullets in the back. The back legs tend to be the first legs that slip. I'm sure you've probably all experienced as you're coming around a corner, the back leg's slipping out a little bit, so I tend to always wear slightly bigger studs behind. Now, another principle about possibly using slightly smaller studs at the front is that there is always a certain amount of movement both on takeoff and on landing after a jump where the front feet do just slip a little bit. And that's just a natural way for a horse to have a little less stress in their joints. If the conditions aren't necessarily so wet, but they might be a little harder, what we tend to do is use sharper studs. And you see a couple I've got here. They tend to be a little bit pointier at the top. That is better for the actual hard ground. They tend to pierce the top of the ground a little bit better. If the going becomes even really much softer, as you can see, we've got some bigger studs here. So the softer the ground, you tend to go for the bigger studs. Okay, so now you've seen all the equipment and all the studs. Next job is to go and fit them to the horse's feet.